So welcome all of you to this Wednesday evening Dhamma discussion and meditation practice. And this week we are continuing looking at reviewing again the Satipatthana Sutta, or the Four Foundations of Mindfulness. And we've already gone over the mindfulness of the body. We spent the last 2 weeks on the mindfulness in the body, and hopefully you would have understood that, sometimes there's this misunderstanding about mindfulness of the body, and that you see the body as some, ill-smelling, foul-smelling thing, or impermanent, and not to be given much attention to, or so on. And the emphasis on seeing like the 32 parts of the body, how they're subject to decay and change, and the four elements and so on. And these are important aspects, but in terms of our meditation practice itself, in terms of developing awareness and concentration and awareness, the body serves as the anchor to the present moment, and the anchor to be able to stay connected to the nervous system, where all the senses are connected, because that is the foundation for being able to contemplate the more important aggregates even of the of feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness, which is our mind. But of course, the getting centered and grounded in the body, as I've mentioned so many times, is sort of like going into a theater, into a balcony seat, and taking a front row balcony seat to observe the play of our body and mind, and to have that detachment. So contemplating the body as the four elements, and of the 32 parts of the body, is to gain that sort of detachment to it, and seeing this body as just this conditioned organism, and not to be so much attached to using the body to gain glamour and fame, and use it to gain strength or power over others and so on. But anyway, it's that sort of detached awareness which sets the stage for the beginning of the mind, the beginning of contemplating the mind. So the Four Foundations of Mindfulness, again, the subjects of them are the five aggregates. So the aggregate of the body, we've already been discussing, but it's not only the physical body. The aggregate of the material formations include also all the vibrations coming through our senses, the visible vibrations coming through the eye, sound vibrations coming through the ear, odor vibrations through the nose, tongue vibrations through the tongue, as well as the sensations, on the body itself, on the surface of the body, or from within the body. So all of these sort of vibrations are our contact, with the world, and are the world creating process. But all of these vibrations, the material vibrations, they all produce feelings, sensations or feelings in the body. Now, when you say the mindfulness of feelings, the definition of feelings, according to the Buddha, was that the pleasant, painful, or neutral sensations being generated by these five physical vibrations, again, odor, sound, smell, taste, touch, as well as mental vibrations, we'll talk more about later. So all these material vibrations, or sensations produce feelings. So sensations are the actual sort of the cellular vibrations, or you could say the cellular vibrations of the material world. Whereas the feeling is the pleasant or painful or neutral tone that these vibrations are giving off. And I've talked about these, and this is really the birth of the mind. The mind springs into action, and all of our thoughts and reactions are based on these reactions to the pleasurable feelings, the painful feelings, and the neutral feelings. But most of our reactions come through reaction to the pleasurable feelings and the painful feelings. And we've talked about this earlier, and when I give the analogy or the example of a young baby when it's born, when it starts to experience things through the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and the mind, and the things that bring it a pleasurable feeling, it considers as things that it likes and that it would like to have, and it would expect in the future. And the things that the child experiences as a painful feeling, then the child then things that it doesn't like. And this is also creates the past and the future. That's why feelings are very important to understand. That the reason why we have desire for things is because we want that pleasurable feeling that the objects are giving to us. And so we expect them again and again. So we're hoping for the future. The reason why we hope for the future is we're hoping that we will have more of these pleasurable feelings to counteract the amount of painful or unpleasant feelings that we are constantly getting on the other hand. So in the course of our life, even now as adults, but throughout the whole life, the life is just a continual back and forth between trying to satisfy the pleasurable feelings that give us comfort and so-called happiness, and to get away from the painful feelings or the unpleasant feelings that we don't care for, or the objects that we don't care for. And really, if you really check up from the moment you get up in the morning to the moment you go to sleep at night, the majority of our thoughts and actions and ideas are based on trying to satisfy that need for pleasurable feeling, whether it's encouragement or pat on the back from somebody else from doing a good job, or just satisfying your taste with the pleasurable taste and so on. And that helps to counteract the painful feelings, because if people really check up in their life, the amount of unpleasant sensations in a person's life day to day probably would outweigh the amount of pleasurable feelings. Of course, that depends on each person and so on. But these feelings and sensations occur so quickly, a lot of them go almost unnoticed because they occur even on kind of unconscious levels. And so that's why understanding these feelings, and that we've created them, and we go on creating them by attributing these ideas to the objects that produce these feelings. So normally we think it's the object that we want. I'm going to go back to the example I give with the baby. I think you've all heard this example multiple times because I repeat it all the time. with a young child, baby. The first time he takes a sweet, as I give the example of the grandmother brings the child some sweets, chocolate. And then the baby tastes that chocolate and gets a pleasurable feeling and maybe a kind of smile on the baby's face. So that pleasurable feeling, he likes that. And so he wants to get it again. And so he's then identifies this pleasurable feeling with the face of the grandmother that was associated with that pleasurable feeling. And then he hopes that the grandmother will come again in the future, expecting that he will get that pleasurable feeling again. And the same thing can be said for the painful feeling, anything that caused it a painful feeling. Let's say if the cat came by and he grabbed the cat's tail and the cat scratched the young child, and you would have a fear of the cats and produce a unpleasant feeling or fear, which is a painful feeling, when he saw the cat again. And then you're hoping that that cat won't come around again in the future. And so this is how the past and the future is actually created within our mind. And we do that with almost every single object that we've come into contact with. And through learning language, the young child learns the name of every single object of sight, sound, smell, taste, or touch that is coming through, because we learn the language and we go to school and parents teach us these things. Maybe they tell us to fear these kind of people, fear these kind of things, and that they, bring trouble, or you should like these things. So these ideas of pleasure and pain are to some extent also programmed into us by what our parents have taught us, or at school, and so many other influences. And the mind creates this kind of web, the web of attraction and aversion, of pleasure and pain, of fear and desire, or desire and anger, that are generated from that. So normally, normally we say we like some object, but actually the object is only the vehicle that delivers the feeling. It's the feeling really that we want. The object doesn't become that much important really. It's only the vehicle for delivering the feeling. And let me just clarify also, before I go on, that in English language, when we say a feeling, like I'm feeling sad, well, actually, sad is a kind of a painful feeling, but we kind of identify the emotions as feelings, like jealousy or sadness or happiness. But these are actually emotions within the Buddhist psychology, not so much the feelings, but they are connected with the feelings. But it's really the feeling that we are reacting toward. And I give the example of, when you're younger and you develop friendships, and usually you develop friendships with certain people because they're, push all your right buttons and, giving you whatever emotional or mental support, then, or, some kind of security, we then say, I like the person, or they're, we like them as long as they are producing these kind of feelings for us. But due to impermanence, those people may change, or we also ourselves might change. And then that person may no longer be supplying the pleasurable feeling. The obvious example, of course, is if you're a friend or, partner or somebody else like that, starts having eyes for somebody else, or starts, you can feel that because of that jealousy, and then you may not start, lose the liking for them. But there's so many other examples. Or just children naturally grow out as they grow up in years. They grow out of liking toys, for example, and then they start liking, the opposite sex, so to speak, or maybe even the same one. I don't know. But but the main thing is that these objects stop producing the same kind of feelings in us. So we want to change the object. So that's what's important to understand. We think it's really the objects that we want, but it's really the feeling, the comfort or the pleasurable feeling that any object gives us, whether it's something you see, hear, smell, taste, touch in the body, feel in the body, or even our thoughts, because our thoughts can produce feelings, like a painful memory, for example, or a pleasant memory. We can remember these things, and then we want to revive the past. We want to try to recreate the past, thinking we're going to be able to recreate these feelings, but we can't really, because the feelings are impermanent, and objects and conditions are always changing. We ourselves are always changing. So we really can't control these feelings. And they arise as long as the contact is there, as long as that material stimulation is giving that pleasurable or painful feeling, then we are reacting to it. But then without notice, those feelings could immediately cease also. And then the mind would then react to something else, would then focus or get attracted to some other pleasurable feeling or painful feeling. Whatever the strongest one is, entering our field of cognition, then the mind will be attracted to that. You could be enjoying one pleasurable feeling, and maybe through some other sense, you hear something or smell something, and the mind, that's a more stronger one, and the mind will lose its focus on the previous one, and then start having desire and aversion for another one. And so that's why these feelings, they're impermanent, and we can't really control them because they depend on the environment that we're in. And if we're in a chaotic environment, there may be lots of painful or unpleasant sensations that are, coming through, and the person struggles with all these things, but something could happen, and within a few seconds or a minute, a lot of those sensations could vanish and be replaced by other ones. So this is an important part of the mindfulness, the practice of mindfulness, and also the practice of in the Vipassana meditation, because these are all based on all these sensations that are coming through our senses. And at any one time, if you're in a normal sort of environment, whether it's in your house or it's out in the street or it's, almost anywhere, there's always going to be things you're seeing, probably things that you're hearing too, and things that you're feeling in the body. Those three are probably the most prominent types of sensory vibrations coming through us, things you're seeing, hearing, and feeling in the body, because your body is always contacting something. And then, of course, depending on where you are, there's smells and there's tastes. And then the thoughts that are produced in them, the mental feelings. So the feeling actually is a mental phenomenon, where the physical vibration itself is the material aggregate, but they give rise to the mental aggregate of feeling, because it's recreated within the mind. Whenever you experience the same type of material vibration again, or a similar one, the mind automatically, you know, recreates this idea that this object is something that's pleasurable or painful. And of course, we don't really see that happening. It's all, automatic. And then we react to it. So, but the important takeaway of this understanding of feelings is that it's not the objects that we want so much. It's the feelings that the objects produce in us. And if we can learn how to produce pleasurable feelings within our mind through sort of non-material ways, and also how to not let the painful feelings affect us so much, then we won't have the need to react or to develop so much craving and desire or spend so much time planning and scheming how we're going to get our next pleasurable feelings, or how to avoid the painful feelings. People are always wanting to avoid this and avoid this and avoid that. And it's like almost they live within their own self-created prison. So when you understand the nature of feelings, and when you've developed your mindfulness, your concentration and mindfulness, and especially in meditation, that you start to experience deeper levels of inner happiness. So let's say when you develop concentration, you start developing the piti, or the mental joy that comes through a more concentrated state, or for being more connected to the present moment. Then the inherent happiness or well-being arises within the mind, and that supplants a lot of the desire seeking that we have, because we are becoming inwardly contented and satisfied with being more grounded and connected to the present moment. Or when we go deeper into meditation and develop access concentration, momentary concentration, access concentration, or even the jhanas, then we're experiencing this even deeper, intense kind of mental joy that surpasses what any material vibration can bring you. And this you have more control over. I mean, once you have learned to develop it, and that is how you begin to be able to reduce the need for so much external stimulation and all the problems that come with needing that external stimulation by having to contact so many unpleasant objects in the effort to get a hold of some imagined pleasure in the future. We have to experience a lot of unpleasantness and pain in the process. And in the same way, in meditation, learning how to endure the painful feelings that come up in the body through sitting longer, or like itchy, scratchy, stinging, biting sensations, or other aches and pains. You can actually learn how to observe them through focusing on these feelings and in impermanence, and see how it's only if we pay attention to that itch, it's going to stick and focus in their mind. But if we can kind of just let that itch be on one side and feel some pleasant sensation in the pulse of blood in your fingers or toes, or some other just the vibrations of the body, the mind won't be pulled so much toward fretting about the other annoyances or things like that, or even sounds that might come up in your meditation, or and so on. So the contemplation of feelings is about just identifying when the mind starts this attraction. So the pleasant feeling is a kind of an attraction towards some incoming vibration, or it's an aversion. We can feel like, when you get a pain, there's this kind of contraction. So, just to identify, this is a painful feeling and this is a pleasant feeling. And understand how they arise, and especially how they are conditioned. This is what's important, to know how they are conditioned and how we can decondition them. And this is part of the mindfulness of the feelings in the Satipatthana Sutta. The second foundation of mindfulness is knowing, identifying first, painful feeling is arising, and understanding how does this painful feeling arise. It arises through contact, and it arises because we've programmed our mind to regard this particular thing as something unpleasant, and so we want to get away from it. And instead, you just relax around it using your mindfulness and concentration. You try to endure these unpleasant sensations a little bit longer each time. And before if you have to, then, changing your posture, or eventually maybe, shooing away that mosquito that doesn't want to go away, or something else. But the idea is that you train each time an unpleasant feeling arises. You try to endure it a little longer with that wisdom of knowing that essentially this feeling is like an empty water bubble. This is an analogy, a very nice analogy that the Buddha gave toward these feelings. They're sort of like water bubbles. A child, you blow the water bubbles and it has little colors on it and it looks very nice, it looks very real, but then after 5 or 6 seconds, it goes poof, and it just vanishes. So in the same way, these feelings that arise are like that. They arise, they last a few seconds or longer, but because of impermanence, or we stop paying attention to it, it ceases, and it's like it's no longer there. And it's like, like the feeling when in the sitting posture. You could have pain in the body, but if you enter a deeper state of meditation, you no longer feel that pain. But it's still there, the vibration is still there, but your attention is no longer focusing on it, so it's like it's not there. It's there and it's not there. It's there if you were to put some, electronic gadget on it that could measure, some cellular vibration or something, but mentally it's not there. So that's what's important, is the understanding that these feelings are primarily mental. But, it does take a lot of practice to decondition our mind. But that is why the second foundation of mindfulness of feelings, is to understand that these the Buddha said there's 18 ranges of feelings. There's pleasant, painful, and neutral feeling that comes via your body. There's pleasant, painful, neutral feelings that come via your eye. Then the same 3 feelings come through your ear, your nose, your tongue, and the mind also. So these are called, called the 18 ranges of feelings, 3 for each of that come through the senses. And really, that's what we react to. Our whole world essentially arises as reactions, either desires and aversions, to these painful and pleasant feelings. And all the karma that we do. People will kill, steal, lie, slander, intoxicate their mind and abuse others all in the name of satisfying this need for pleasurable feeling and to get away from the painful feeling. Because they have not connected to the natural pleasant feelings that are there in a deeper state of awareness. And when you're more grounded and centered in the present moment. And also learning how to relax around the unpleasant feelings and learn how not to be afraid of them so much. But people are in fear of painful feelings coming to them, and a lot of them are imagined, that they think some object is going to come and give them a painful feeling, and they might fear and worry about it for a long time, but that object may never come because of impermanence, and so on. So it's a very powerful insight. I mean, getting insight into the nature of how these feelings affect our mind is really, that's why the Buddha listed it right after the body. Because all of our thoughts and our karmic reactions are based on these feelings. So if we can get a handle on these feelings and learn how to develop more equanimity, not thinking we need all these artificial, pleasurable feelings that the impermanent world gives us, and that we don't have to be afraid of all the unpleasant feelings that come to us, that there's ways that we can change our attitude towards them, then we can eventually reach a more stable level of what is called equanimity. So equanimity is that balanced mind that's not going after so much to create or react to pleasurable sensations, and also not to react so much or have fear toward the unpleasant or the painful sensations. And that's why that second foundation of mindfulness is very important. And the Buddha taught these foundations of mindfulness in that order, because each one is a stepping stone for understanding the next one. Because your mental states are triggered off by these feelings. So if you reach a point where you have developed equanimity toward the feelings, then you'll have more equanimity toward the mental states that are being triggered off by these feelings as well. So friends, that's what I wanted to explain about this nature of the feelings. And now if there are any questions, no one had written any questions in or by email. So if anybody has any questions on any of those things that I was just mentioning, feel free to use your yellow hand to ask a question, or you could unmute yourself and ask a question also. So don't be shy or bashful. Okay, there's a yellow hand. Looks like April has a yellow hand up there.
Yes, Bhante. Which is sankhara? Would that be the feelings that arise based on the contact, or the emotions that then arise based on the feelings?
Well, a feeling is a sankhara, because a feeling is something that arises dependent on something else. So these feelings arise dependent on the contact and the material vibrations that are coming through our senses. And okay. So they are sankharas, but in the mindfulness, the fourth foundation of mindfulness, the sankharas are, is a very large group, but feelings and perceptions, the aggregates are all part of sankhara.
Okay.
true. But the sankhara khanda is the sort of the reactions that we take based on the feelings and perceptions. So sankharas would be more like the emotions and the urges to want to do and the intentions that we arise in order to chase after these pleasurable sensations or to get away from the painful sensations.
Okay, thank you, Bhante.
All right. Oh, there's a question down there in the chat box that I hadn't seen. This might be just a comment.
Bhante, can I read it and get it done quickly?
No, let me just read it, please.
All right, great.
Compassion for others. This is called protecting others, protect oneself. Are not these characteristics, metta and karuna, at the root feelings? If we have time, and where does the heart figure into the nature of feelings? Well, that could be a larger discussion in itself, but certainly metta and karuna are pleasurable, have the characteristic of being a pleasurable feeling because it's free from anger and hatred. It is free from greed and hatred by and large. So developing these thoughts of friendliness and kindness towards others because of the absence of anger and hatred while you're practicing the metta or the karuna, then that is producing a pleasurable feeling within ourselves, which is Vedana. And so, by practicing metta and karuna, by protecting others, as you mentioned, we protect ourselves, and by protecting ourselves, we protect others too. And by not causing pain to others, we give security to others in that way. Now, this idea about the heart figures in the nature of feelings. I'm not going to go into that because that's, to me, the heart just pumps blood. And, but there's a whole lot of issues with that. I don't want to get into these various arguments about the nature of the heart. But the nature of the heart, just to use that, so it means the present moment awareness. It's, it's sort of an analogy, not the heart that itself has any particular emotion like that. Of course, again, that's subject to different points of view. But it's the nature of that giving life. So the heart is going out and giving life, and so it's connected with love and compassion. But these are because a lot of people everyone has a heart, right? But some people have so much hatred and anger in their mind that it's not necessarily connected with the heart. It's a mental attitude. But when you reach a state of present moment awareness, and when you've temporarily transcended the ego or have weakened the sense of ego, then naturally you feel a oneness with everybody, because that vibration of present moment awareness is not being, the attention is not going out to any particular individuals based on desire or aversion. And it's like, just energy going everywhere. So in that sense, it's that feeling of, oneness that gives that sense of connection and love. Okay. So friends, I think we'll finish up this discussion now, so we can go on to our meditation practice. So, so we're going to take a. Is there any last questions? Anybody wants to raise a yellow hand? Okay. So let's take a few minutes break and then come back and get ready for a few, some deep breathing and some stretches to get the energy flowing, and then go into our meditation. Okay.